Welcome. Welcome. You are listening to audio from the table. If you'd like to learn more about our community or donate to this ministry, please visit thetabletx.com.
Welcome to the table. It's odd being up here, not paying a thing. So in July, as you guys know, we do things a little differently. We don't have some of the same faces that are leading up here. Every year we give our senior leaders the month of July to recharge, and that does two things for us, really. It gives us the chance to have them recharge their batteries, and it gives us the chance to hear from people that we don't normally get to hear from. And we have some really incredible folks here that have some things to share. So tonight's no exception. We have a real treat in store. A lot of you know Charles Kaiser. Probably introductions aren't really necessary, but he's a pretty unassuming guy. So I want to give you a little bit of the background, because he's Dr. Charles Kaiser. And when I think of Charles, I think of someone who is a connector. In sitting down and talking with Charles, one of the things that's just so crazy to me is how many people he knows that I know that I didn't think anybody else would have known, like from 20 or 30 years ago. In Christian circles, he is that connector that makes things happen within the body of Christ that is pretty amazing. So let me just give you co-author of Trauma-Informed Evangelism, Cultivating Communities of Wounded Healers, regional area developer of the Post-Evangelical Collective, and now leading the Healing Collective, which, a lot of his work in that area, it's the natural kind of culmination of things, and again, making those connections across the body. Just enough to say, he's a pretty cool guy who knows what he's talking about. So, without further ado, let's welcome Charles.
Thank you, Scott, for those kind words. Yeah, we come from a shared religious background where it's like, Kevin Bacon and 6 degrees of separation. It's like 1 degree of separation, and it's really not hard to know the same people from 20 years ago. And also, because of your introduction, now I feel like I should know what I'm talking about up here. So we'll see. I'll let you all be the judges of that this evening. So grateful to be with you all. And I guess if we've got folks joining us online, we know you're out there too, and glad you're with us here tonight. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets are summed up in these 2 commandments. About a month ago, I woke up feeling particularly overwhelmed with sadness and anxiety. And I feel my feelings in my stomach. And I could just feel like a heaviness in my stomach. And per usual, I'm not super sure where it's coming from, but I could guess. I co-lead a nonprofit organization, and fundraising pressures are ever present. I'm working on a project, and I'm running behind, and I, on this particular day, was not feeling very creative or productive about that. And when I get in these times of overwhelm, one of my healthier coping mechanisms is to go to the gym. And so I go to the gym, try to sweat off some of that anxiety and stress, and yet the heaviness still lingers. So I get ready, I go to work, try to sit down and get something done. And I work in a co-working space, and I work in open seating, and so there's always people around me. And I know when I'm stressed, when the smallest sounds irritate me. And the coworker to the right was talking what was to me probably at a normal volume, but so annoyingly loud about sales metrics and websites on their Zoom call, and I'm quickly realizing I am not in any kind of headspace to do what I had planned to do today, which was to read over, maybe for the 100th time, interviews of religious trauma survivors about their experiences of healing and resilience. And so I quickly start to think, how can I get out of here? This is not working, which I suppose is a privilege of getting to set your own schedule and your own hours. It's also a challenge of getting to set your own schedule and hours, because you're like, oh, I could get out of here if I want to. And what is my favorite thing to do when I get overwhelmed? I go to the movies, like a wannabe Don Draper in Mad Men. So I look at my phone and I see, oh, there's not one. There are 2 movies showing this afternoon. What the heck? I'm going to go and just lose myself in the afternoon matinee, which sounds great, except that now I have to face my fiercest adversary, my inner critic. Because while I sit through these movies, I'm experiencing no small amount of guilt and shame for watching these movies. My inner critic says things like, you're wasting half a day that you could be getting something done. Like, what would your donors think if they knew you were like shirking your responsibilities? What would the foundation think if you're late on this book project that they've given you a grant to write? What would your wife, don't answer this, what would your wife think, who has a corporate job and doesn't have this kind of flexibility to take some time off if she gets overwhelmed? What would she think? You should feel ashamed of yourself. You're hiding because you have nothing to offer. You're trying to escape because you've lost your creative edge. My inner critic can be pretty mean, and he's really meaner. I omitted some choice words because this is church. But I wonder, maybe you have your own inner critic. Maybe you can relate to that. A significant part of my spiritual journey has been learning to internalize that I am the beloved of God, that I'm loved by God, and receiving the love of God and trying to love people out of the love that I have received from God. But I have recently noticed this gap in my formation, in between receiving God's love and loving other people out of that love. And the gap that I'm noticing in my healing and formation is captured by a seemingly insignificant phrase in one of Jesus' most well-known teachings. And that phrase is, as yourself. As in, love your neighbor as yourself. For some reason, I have found a way to skip over that part between receiving God's love and trying to love other people while continuing to be very judgmental and harsh and unloving with myself. Of course, Jesus, when he says love your neighbor as yourself, he's quoting the Hebrew Bible and this obscure verse in Leviticus 19, in between a commandment to not hold a grudge and another commandment to not mate animals of different kinds. Love your neighbor, ka moka. You kind of have to clear your throat as you say it, as yourself, ka mocha. This is an invitation that draws on an assumed basic sense of empathy that all of us have for ourselves, that we ought to care for other people with the same assumed respect and care that we would give ourselves. The same kind of logic is at work in Jesus' golden rule, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The assumption being that, well, we would prefer that other people do good and kind things to us because that feels nice. And so we ought to do good and kind things to other people, right? And on one hand, this makes perfect sense. It's absolutely true. Just to survive and move through the world, all of us have this baseline, hardwired sense of self-interest and self-care and self-preservation that's not bad. It's just we have to look out for ourselves on some level, as ourself, as yourself. And on the other hand, I wonder if many of us are harder on ourselves than anyone else. This is true enough in our household that we recite kind of a reversed golden rule of sorts, which goes something like, you would never say that to somebody else, so you probably shouldn't say it to yourself. Which raises the question, why are we so hard on ourselves? Why do we struggle to love ourselves? I wonder if on some level we believe that criticism is the most effective way to bring about change in ourselves and others. We might even equate it to love or tough love. You know, parents sometimes criticize and correct their children. If you make mistakes in school or in work, you can expect to receive criticism from your bosses or your teachers. They might even call it constructive criticism. But what's true, I'm so glad these pages are numbered, y'all. But what's true about criticism is that it actually often elicits feelings of guilt and shame in the people that receive the criticism. And what's more, it can also trigger, where can I put this that it will not get blown by the air conditioner? Okay. It can also trigger our defense systems where we get reactive, we get resistant, and we double down instead of becoming open to change or being better. I wonder, though, if there's a deeper reason why we struggle to love ourselves. Many of us grew up with religious ideas like original sin and total depravity and sinful nature. Original sin being the notion that we have inherited this sinful nature from the first humans, Adam and Eve, who made a decision to disobey God, and that disobedience and flaw has spread generationally down through the lines, and we receive that whether we like it or not. Total depravity is the idea that there's nothing we can do really on our own unless God does something to change us. We're kind of irreparably broken or corrupt. Total depravity means we can't trust anything that is in us or that we think or feel. Even our best intentions are probably corrupt and selfish, according to this idea. And then sinful nature would be like this sense that we have this tendency, whether we like it or not, to harm ourselves or others. Now imagine stewing in those ideas for weeks and weeks, for years and years. Maybe you don't have to imagine because you grew up in religious environments where those were topics 1, 2, and 3 in the sermons every single month. But imagine stewing on that. How might you view yourself if those were the ideas you were immersed in? Might it be difficult to love yourself if that's the kind of imagination you're carrying around about yourself? Might it, in fact, be easy to despise yourself if that is the way that you're assessing and viewing yourself. The supporters of these religious ideas would say, well, that's exactly why we need the love and salvation of God, because God loves us in spite of our depravity, in spite of our sin. And that's certainly true. But the idea, too, that we were unworthy in any way of God's love, but God makes us worthy by God's love. If these ideas are true, and if we really steep in those ideas, then it's no wonder to me why we would struggle to love ourselves, if that's who we believe we really are. But I want to wonder, what if these religious ideas aren't exactly right? What if they are a distorted interpretation of our scriptures that need to be reinterpreted in a more life-giving way? What if we aren't totally depraved? What if we are actually inherently good in our essence? God in the creation story says when they make humanity, they call humanity very good. And God also says that humanity is created in the image of God. There's something divine about us. What if we're not totally depraved? What if we're actually inherently good? Maybe you're thinking, as I think, well, how do you reckon for sin, for harming ourselves and others? Don't we sin? How do we deal with that? Of course we do. But what if we sin? What if the reason that we sin is not because we've inherited original sin and we're totally and irreparably depraved? But what if we sin because we're wounded? What if what we've inherited from our ancestors are their wounds? And what if one of the greatest wounds that we have received is to believe that we are fundamentally bad and totally depraved? How would we respond to a wounded child? With compassion, right? I've been geeking out lately on a mode of therapy called internal family systems. It was created by a therapist named Richard Schwartz, who was trained as a marriage and family therapist in family systems theory. And family systems theory essentially is the idea that individuals are best helped and cared for and healed when treating them not just as individuals, but in the context of their larger relational systems. So many things unlock and become clear when we see ourselves not just as individuals, but as a part of the patterns and the systems that are in our family dynamics. So Schwartz, for decades, did therapy with folks and started to wonder through his conversations with people if there also wasn't a family inside of us as well. That we have these little family members inside of our minds. Instead of a single compartment mind, like we think that just has thoughts and feelings. He wondered, what if inside of us we have this little internal family? And we have members and parts kind of that interact with one another. Maybe you've seen the movie Inside Out, where each of the characters kind of represent in the teenage brain the emotions that they're having. It's not exactly the same. I bet IFS inspired it, but it's a very similar kind of vibe. So what I want to do is just give you a real quick internal family systems IFS 101. And the reason I want to do that is because I found it so wonderfully helpful for loving ourselves, for ways of thinking about how we can care and respond to ourselves with compassion. IFS suggests that there's two major kinds of parts within each of us. The first major kind is the exile. The exiles are the wounded parts of ourselves. They're often hidden away. We're often not consciously aware of them. Exiles are often younger versions of ourselves that are kind of frozen in a time where we were deeply harmed or had some sort of traumatic experience. So that's exiles. That's the first major part. The second major kind of part is the protector. Protectors are, well, their job is to protect us. They protect us either by trying to keep us from becoming emotionally triggered, or they protect us by soothing us and caring for us after we have been emotionally triggered. The protector parts that try to prevent us from getting triggered are called managers. The inner critic is a popular type of managers. The inner critic might criticize us because they're afraid of what will happen if we don't do something. They're afraid of the consequences if we don't comply or get our act together. In my story, my inner critic was afraid of what will happen if you are not able to fundraise enough for your organization. What will happen if you're not able to submit your book proposal on time? And so my inner critic was criticizing me in an attempt to get me to move off center and do something about it and be protective. Really, my inner critic was trying to protect me by criticizing me in that way. The other type of protector is called a firefighter. Firefighters exist to put out emotional fires. When we get triggered, when we get emotionally hyper-aroused, they enact defenses and coping mechanisms that help us to numb or to avoid or to distract or to chill. It might be alcohol or Netflix or fitness. I mean, you pick your preference. Firefighters don't really care if our soothing behaviors are destructive or not for us. They just want to get the fire out. Let's put the fire out at whatever cost. In my own story, when I was feeling overwhelmed, my movie-going firefighter came to the rescue to try to sweep me away and distract me so I could get lost in something else so I didn't have to feel the pain that I was conscious to. That firefighter was trying to protect me from the emotional pain that I was feeling. And it's common, you can see it in my own experience, that firefighters and managers within us are often at odds. They're in tension with each other. My firefighter wanted me to take a break and avoid things and get lost in a movie. My manager wanted me to do the opposite. Dig in, be more productive, come on, what's wrong with you? And so they can kind of be at war within us. In recovery language, they might call this white knuckling, where you just try to get a grip and hold on. But it's ultimately not sustainable because it doesn't address the pain and the wounds underneath. And so invariably, those protectors come out again to try to protect us. IFS would suggest that instead of pushing these parts away, that we welcome them in. Our instinct is often to push them away, to criticize them, to be disgusted by them, to be ashamed or embarrassed. It's a very vulnerable thing for me to tell you my movie-going story because I'm kind of embarrassed, that I do that. That's my inner critic. It's vulnerable. I want to keep that stuff out. I want to keep that stuff at the margins, right? I want to tamp them down. But that doesn't work. Criticism and disgust only make them stronger and more resistant. Schwartz suggests that we, instead of pushing these parts away, that we welcome them in. We listen to them. We seek to understand them. We get curious with them. We might even thank them for the role they're trying to play in our lives to protect us. In other words, we ought to love these parts of ourselves. We ought to love these parts of ourselves the same way Jesus said, love the folks that are at your margins. Love your enemies. It's true internally, too. What are the parts of ourselves that we'd like to push to the margins in our minds? The parts of ourselves that we feel like are our enemies or that we're at odds with. How can we embrace those parts? Because as we're able to love those parts of ourselves, they're able to release their burdens, experience some healing, and serve some healthier roles in our lives. Schwartz believes that there is a spiritual reality at the core of each of us that is deeply wise, deeply loving, deeply good, which he calls the capital S self. In the Christian tradition, we would call this the soul or the image of God. It's the deepest, truest essence of who we are. And when we're living out of capital S self, when we're living out of our souls, we are calm, we are connected, we're courageous, we're clear, we're curious. There's so many C words that we are when we're in that essence that is our soul. And the idea is that as we heal and grow, we're able to live out of that place of soul more and more. And our soul is able to love and tend to those parts of ourselves that might be at conflict. And we're able to harmonize and be a team, be a cohesive family together as we seek to love God and to love ourselves and to love others. In case you're wondering, as I have wondered, if this is just a bunch of navel-gazing, psychobabble mumbo-jumbo, that might be an inner critic talking, by the way. So it's an opportunity for curiosity. But also, I would just want to point us back to Jesus' words, where he says that our ability to love ourselves is ultimately in service to others. Because I believe we can only truly love others to the extent that we're able to love ourselves. And we're only able to love ourselves as we receive the love of God that is poured out into our souls by the Holy Spirit. Our capacity to participate in the healing and renewal of all things is directly connected to our capacity to love ourselves. That is the invitation. It's the invitation to receive or to reject or to wrestle with. Wherever you are today, that's fine. But it's the invitation to receive the love of God, to love yourself with that love, and to love others out of that love you have received and given to yourself. I want to conclude with a brief imagination exercise. And I invite you to participate if you feel safe and comfortable to do so. If you would rather not, that's totally fine. All are welcome. None are required. And so I'll just give you some prompts as we go. We're going to do an imaginative exercise that relates to loving ourselves. If it feels comfortable to you, you can close your eyes. And if not, that's okay. You can find a place to rest your sight on the floor or in front of you or a wall. I invite you to take a couple deep breaths, just noticing your inhale and your exhale. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the weight of your body in your chair, being held by the chair and the ground. I want to invite you to bring to mind someone who loves you deeply. It could be a best friend or a spouse, or a child, or maybe an image for Spirit or God or Jesus. Someone who loves you deeply. I invite you to picture their face. Picture them looking at you with love. Notice how it feels in your body to receive that love. if you're able to come in touch with that, just hold on to that feeling. Savor it. Remember it. Rest in it. Now I want to invite you to picture yourself. Get an image of your face across from you, yourself looking at yourself. And try to look at yourself with the same love and compassion that you were just receiving from your loved one. Love yourself with that same love in whatever way makes sense to you. If you notice any resistance to this, that's okay, perfectly normal. You might be compassionate with that part of yourself that's resisting. You might ask that part if it'll give you some space to love yourself. And if it won't, that's okay too. It might be enough simply just to extend love to that part of yourself that's resisting. Take a few moments more just to be present to whatever it is the experience you're having now of showing love to yourself is. When you're ready, I invite you to return to your breath, noticing again the inhale and exhale, noticing your feet on the floor, the weight of your body in the chair. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, to open your eyes and join us again in this space. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Mother Spirit. Amen. On the night before his death, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and said, "This is my body given for you." After supper, he took the cup and said, "This is my blood poured out for you. Whenever you share this, remember me." We proclaim the mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again.